What's up, guys? DJ here, bringing you for the very first time, for the 12th time, the news, rumors, and leaks that came from the Games Workshop Battle Report featuring Astra Militarum and the Necrons. This gave us some of the nerfs that we're going to see, as well as some of the rule changes on the overall structure of how the game is going to be played, including one rule that actually is not included in Ark of Omens that Games Workshop teased. Before we get started into that, I want to give a special shout out to Sam Dayton and the guys at the Shop Game Shop. Sam recently asked me if I would record game one of his RTT happening on January 21st, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time. I'll be out there, and I look forward to anybody who's able to stop out there. Please do. It's going to be January 21st at the Shop Game Shop in Toledo, Ohio. They will be using the primer. I believe this will be a primer for the LVO, which, if anyone doesn't know, a primer is basically a practice tournament using the rules for a major GT to allow players to test for the first time and see how they score overall, etc., 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 all of those things. So that's something coming up soon. Looking forward to it. And I will also be part of Sam's GT that he'll be putting together later on this year and be there for the top table to record and stream. Hopefully have some more streaming set up by that time. With all that, let's get over into Ark of Omens. So, Ark of Omens, on a whole, for the structure of what it's going to do for the game. We will now be down to one detachment. That is the Ark of Omens detachment. What that means is you take one HQ and one of the three other Force Org slots. You must take 3 units from that Force Org, but then the rest can be up to 3 of any of them, including an additional 3 for the choice you would take. Fast attack, troops, elite, etc. Also in the elite slot, you can take up to 3 character elites that have their own individual slots. Other than that, you can take a look and check it out. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's basically just a big open canvas for you to build the army of your dreams, with some restrictions. One of the restrictions that we face is the fact that there are units that specifically say in their army entry, 1 per detachment, such as the Ctans. For 1 command point at the beginning of the when mustering your army, you can override that rule for 1 of them. So for Necrons, we're able to take 2 Ctans in the single detachment, where prior we had to spend 2 command points to take a patrol to be able to get that 2 command points, or maybe 3 if you were looking for something a little spicier. But the point is, you would have to take 2. You'd have to spend 2 to 3 command points to get this, where now you're spending 1. And you're probably going to spend 1 on shifting maybe a power over the Sky of Falling Stars. So this, for us, allows us to net command points over how we've been playing in the past. Speaking of command points, we will be still starting with 6 CP, as that was teased. So that's staying true. That's good. And the way we generate the command points at the beginning of the turn is still going to be the same way. So you'll get 2 command points per battle round. And the army composition style that we've been looking at and play style with that is going to stay the same. You can choose who goes first. Now, this one I'm questioning if this is still true. I kind of hope it's not. I'm not a big fan of being able to pick. I really do like right now where it is, where you roll the dice and it's random. So you don't know if you're going to go first or second, and you have to kind of plan for it and how you deploy. Speaking of deploying, it was teased that we are going to be deploying our entire army. And I can tell you right now, the news of the which one was wrong rule, this is it. You will not be deploying your entire army. Sources that I have that have recently come out and stated that it is in the book, and I've seen the page in the book. We will be deploying alternating as we've done in the past. So this may already have broke. This may be old news by the time I get the video edited and out there. But if not, I want to share that with you. So we will still be alternating deployments as we've been getting used to for all this edition. I do like the all-out deploy. It does make things faster. But I feel like that's in a format where you roll the dice and determine who goes first before you deploy, and allows you to deploy appropriately so you don't get swept off the table and can still play the game competitively and even casually still play a good game. When we talk about the detachments, we say that there's only one. That is true for the most part, aside from an allied detachment and an allied hierarchy. Now, we don't know all the details on it, except that Votan are going to be able to take it as allies, and that's scary enough as it is. But for us in the Necron Dynasties and that, we don't really care that much. Unless it has something specifically in there that allows us to mix dynasties without losing certain dynasty buffs, I don't see it really being something that's going to affect us. But more on that to come. Maybe that's going to be the case. Maybe we can split up our dynasties. Might be kind of cool, but highly unlikely. So let's get into the Necrons themselves and what some of these changes mean for us and our dynasties. You know, they nerfed the Silent King, dropping core off of him. We see some nerfs in here, and I look at all this and I just say, this isn't even our final form. And when I say that, I look at that and look at some of the perks that we're going to be getting because of Ark of Omens. One of the units that I think is going to get some perks out of Ark of Omens is going to be my boy here, the Night Scythe. So prior to this, the Night Scythe really isn't that durable. It doesn't have, even at -1 to hit, it really doesn't help it enough to survive some of these heavy guns in the game. So you put it in reserve, but it can't start in strategic. That costs you 2 command points. So all these things are working against the Night Scythe until we get to Ark of Omens, where flyers, rumorly, are going to have the option to go in strategic. But it's not just the flyers. Apparently, any unit in your army can be placed in strategic for free. This is going to be big when it comes to stratagems, such as the Dimensional Gateway, I believe is the name of it. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I will say this. The way the stratagem works is, at the end of your reinforcement step, you can place any unit within 3 inches of a dimensional unit, such as the Night Scythe. Now, this does not restrict you to how far that unit is allowed to be away from the enemy. So this means that if you have a Night Scythe close enough, even just within 9 inches, when you bring those guys down and put them by him through via that strat, they're 3 inches now away. You're looking at taking that 9-inch charge all the way down to a 6. With the seat command point reroll, that's a pretty brutal strike. And that's one of the reasons I've been looking at Lich Guard for how hard they can hit and be able to be that precise on something like a Hecaton and then sit in their deployment. And Lich Guard reanimate well, only 2 wounds apiece. Might be something to think about here. Might be something to think about for a couple other units. Comments below on what units you're looking forward to possibly dropping out of the Night Scythe with combinations and stratagems like this, or even just putting inside and using it as a transport. It's one of those too. So I look forward to that. That's going to be great. I got to dust this guy off. He's been on the shelf for a while, but that's going to be cool to see. Eternal Conquerors got nerfed. Eternal Conquerors is the secondary that allows us to, the Dynasty trait that allows us to be objective secured army-wide. Well, according to what Games Workshop stated, if you take that Dynasty trait, you are not allowed to take a Circumstance of the Awakening. So that's going to nerf that a lot. Not being able to have a free move with your army-wide objective secured is going to be pretty tough. Do I think that's going to knock it out of the meta? I don't think so. I think there's still going to be some armies, lists, I should say, lists in a style of play that does play around with an MSU, multiple small units of wraiths, scarabs, and such, and being able to tag objectives. So I don't think it's going to completely knock it out, but it definitely opens our eyes up to looking at some other dynasties. Right now, I'm really looking at Novak and how hard they can hit, especially with scarabs, and being able to back them up with C-Tans and just threat overload almost. As well as, like I said, with the Night Scythe and some of the drops. So with that, now what about our secondaries? Our secondaries have been for a little while the biggest boost that we've had to being competitive, where a Necron army could max out their secondaries as early as turn 3 with some of these. Purge the Vermin Ancient Machineries, and, well, not Ancient Machineries, Treasure of Aeons could all be capped in 3 turns. And Ancient Machineries, even if you don't max it out, you can still get 12. And there's some secondaries that maximize themselves at 12. This puts the Necrons in a very strong position to outscore most armies and get wiped off the field. Well, they reduced this down a little bit for us, and it's nothing too bad where we can still play our secondary game very strong, but it might change up some list tech. Treasure of Aeons being the first. Treasure of Aeons now is you can score 2, 3, and 4, as opposed to 2, 3, and 5. So rushing a unit across the field to score your 5 points may not be as necessary as before and might compel some armies to pull that. I ran a single 3-man squad of Tomb Blades just for the chance of, okay, if I go first, I can score 5 on Treasure of Aeons on turn 1, as well as getting Ancient Machineries in front of someone's deployment zone also on turn 1. So that unit might not have as much of a role. For some of the people that don't know what I'm talking about with this, Treasure of Aeons is a secondary where your opponent picks 3 objective markers outside of your deployment zone. You can control this if you pick Treasure of Aeons in an objective mission where there's only 3 objectives in the middle, because then they have to take those because they can't pick the one in their deployment zone. They can only pick the ones in no man's land. So that gives you a little bit of a tactical advantage there. With that being said, as long as you hold 2 of those for all 5 turns of the game, you will score 15 points because you get 3 points a turn. If you hold 1, you get 2, hold 2, you get 3, and if you hold all 3 of them, you scored 5. Now the nerf comes from the 5. The 5 will become 4, meaning that you cannot max this out in 3 turns. It's going to take you 4. So again, not really that crushing. You still have the ability to come back from this one, which is something a lot of other secondaries don't have, at least at the current time, where things like grind them down. If you fail to score, grind them down, that's it. That hurts you. You can't make that back up over the course of the game. With Treasure, if somehow you don't get the center objective or one of the other ones and have a turn where you score 2, you still have the possibility of making an aggressive play late in the game to get your 15 by scoring 4 on a later turn. Ancient Machinery is the big change there, is you cannot complete the action now with a vehicle. Since it did dictate core units could be used before, now it's core infantry, core biker, and canoptic. So Wraiths and Scarabs can still do it. Ancient Machineries reads that you go onto an objective marker that is outside of your deployment zone and one that you have not completed the action on already. One unit can attempt to complete the action, and it completes at the end of your or beginning of your next command phase or the end of your turn if the unit completing the action is objective secured. Again, why the objective secured was so powerful, things like this. So moving away from that means we're going to score at the beginning of our command phase. That's still 4 points a hit. And it is still possible to have some other units of objective secured in there that are not all the Scarabs and Wraiths that we've had in the past. So I do still see some play with Ancient Machineries. I think it's still going to be very powerful, very popular. Again, if you complete it 3 times, you get 12 points. That's great. That's great. It just means that we're not crushing the board with 98 points in 4 turns. That's the only thing that it means. And it might push some people away from the objective secured builds, which means that you're going to have to play a little more aggressive and actually remove your opponent from some objective markers to be able to get that 12 on primary. So those are the biggest change for those 2 secondaries. Not that crippling. I was worried for a bit that they were really going to hurt us and make us unplayable. Not at all. Does change some unit composition a little bit, but nothing too much. Directives are left unchanged, as seen by the video. We still get to pick that one, which I love that. I think that's a lot of fun. Still get to pick your one that's in effect for the entire game, and then still have your deck sitting to the side that's stacked as you want to flip for each of the turns. So that's all sticking around. That's great. Now all that's left is, where do we sit for points? Are units going to get a reduction? Are units going to end up costing more? What's going to happen with that? We hear a lot of things with Space Marines getting free upgrades. Are we going to see some free upgrades? Are we going to see a point drop on warriors to compensate for free upgrades? I'd love that. So that's the bigger thing I think that we're waiting to see right now. I think that now that we've made it through the first wave of our secondaries didn't get hurt too bad, now it's on to the second one. Finishing up some of the things I'm looking at with some of the units, that's why I have them on the table. Wraiths. I think Wraiths have a possibility of being very, very valuable here soon. And I think they're going to be in larger squads. Their 4-up invuln is necessary. Chronomancers are great. They can dish out a 5-up invuln and a reroll charge to a lot of things, and that's awesome. Wraiths have a 4-up invuln that they come with inherently. I think that with some of our defensive prowess, being able to have 2 squads of Wraiths, 2 Chronomancers, so 4 invulnerable saving units, and then CTANs backing it up, I think is going to be very big, especially with being able to put things in strategics such as Night Sights and Doom Sights. Night Sights, I think, are going to be able to have an impact on the game again. I don't think we're looking at Kron Air, if some people remember that from the past. I don't think that's going to be the full-fledged comeback, especially with the fact of only being able to take 2 flyers. But I could start seeing a single Night Sight popping up in some armies to allow for a little bit extra move. We've seen how strong the Veil is, being able to bring 2 units out of the scythe like that, one off a stratagem, one out of inside of it, means a lot more mobility around the army, which might be something we can use. Might not be. Might not want to spread out our forces that much. Night Sights are a little pricey, and to put a model that takes up that many points into reserve that's not helping you on one, maybe that's not going to be fast enough. You might need to have everything on board on the table to start out the game. Scarabs, I think, will still have a home. I think that to the last, no prisoners is going to hurt us no matter what. We reanimate, and it's just a matter of we just have to get over it and not give up another kill secondary, not try to have them have too many vehicles or something that gives up an easy second kill secondary where our opponent can then sit back and play our own game. We will still be able to play that defensive stand back game, but now we're going to have to push a little more for Treasure of Aeons and Ancient Machineries. I do look forward to getting the CTANs on the table and being able to afford to have the big boys out there. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be huge. And I think the Technomancer is going to outrange the King. I do think that even with everything I said about the King just recently, I think the Ark of Omens detachment and where we get to save command points on, the Silent King giving us 3 more command points becomes a little less relevant in the grand scheme of things. So now it comes down to his buffs. And with us having to get into our opponent's deployment zone more, the King may not be fast enough to keep up with the units that we need to start fielding. It might be able to bring Lichguard back. Lichguard might be a huge, huge play into this with Night Sights and stuff having speed. Death Marks, Praetorians, and units like that, I still don't see them popping up much. I think Hexmark needs a little more time. He's AP1, 1 damage. Even with Marines losing Armor of Contempt, as rumors have floated for, I don't think it's going to be enough because he's still only 1 damage. And it's wishy-washy, against armies like Tyranids and Eldar and things that have 1 wound models. He can do a lot of work and really bring them down quickly. But then against armies like Space Marines and stuff like that, he's going to be a dead pick. So it is worth putting 65 points into a Hexmark as a dead pick. 55, maybe. But I think 55 might be pushing it, and that might be just wishful thinking. Scorpex are still going to be great, and they've been amazing all edition. They're going to continue to be amazing. They're going to be an amazing unit until we look at a new codex and they completely mess up the rules. So those are some of the things I've thought about with this new thing, the new Ark of Omens. Really excited to hear what you guys have to say. Please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Like, share, and subscribe. And to all my guys heading out to the Glass City GT in Toledo, hosted by Jason Snagowski, good luck to you guys. I look forward to hearing all the war stories when you guys return. As for everyone else, have a safe, happy weekend, and I look forward to talking to you all again soon.